first thing we want to do when we start winterizing is drain your tanks. So we want to drain your freshwater tank, you want to drain your black water tank, your gray water tank. We also need to drain your hot water heater, and there's also in many cases low point drains. So we're going to go over all of these things. It's very important that you actually get to know your unit. Everything is in different spots depending on the make, size, and model of trailer or fifth wheel motorhome that you may have. On this particular model, they're located at the back of the unit underneath. It does splash a little bit when you're doing it. These are your low point drains for your hot and cold water lines. And you simply take the caps off and let any excess water drain out. Once it's finished draining, we need to put the caps back on, because when we start putting antifreeze through the system, if we don't put the caps back on, the antifreeze will actually drain out of here as we're putting it into the system. So once they're drained, which they are now, we can actually put these caps right back on. When we're winterizing our unit, we need to drain the fresh water tank. And in this particular case, there's just a little cap that needs to come off. Just like that. Okay, we also need to drain your black and your gray tank. And for that, if you would like to simply refer to our Sandy Dump video orientation, and that will give you the proper information on dumping your holding tanks. We've drained our freshwater tank, our black, our gray, and our low point drains. We also have to drain our hot water heater. This is an Atwood water heater. There's also a Suburban water heater as well. So what we have to do before we take the plug out is we do have to alleviate the pressure when we're draining it. So we're going to do that by going into the kitchen and simply by opening up the hot tap in the kitchen wide open, just so the air can escape as we're draining it. If you don't do that, when you get to the plug, once it's on its last thread, it'll fire out like a rocket and you'll get soaking wet. So you definitely want to make sure you alleviate that pressure first. And so I'm just going to go inside and open up the tap. So with this being an Atwood water heater, what we need is we need a socket with an extension, and you're either going to need a 7/8 socket or a 15/16. In this particular case, this nylon plug here is a 15/16 socket. If you had a Suburban water heater, you would need 1 1/16 or 1 1/8. So I'm going to put the ones that we don't need aside here, and I'm going to put this on, and we're going to drain this water heater. So it might splash a little bit, so you just have to be careful to stand back a little bit as you're doing it. Okay, and there you go. Now that we've got all of the tanks drained, what we need to do is put your water heater into a bypass position. When we put the antifreeze through the system, we do that from the water pump. We don't want antifreeze to go into the hot water heater. The reason we don't want it to go into the hot water heater is it's a 6-gallon tank. In some cases, it's a 10-gallon tank. And if we don't bypass the water heater will fill up with antifreeze. And so you'll use a heck of a lot of antifreeze to winterize the system, and it's completely unnecessary. This particular water heater has a bypass kit on it, and this is a 1-valve system. Some bypass kits have a 2-valve system and some have a 3-valve system, so it is important to familiarize yourself with the different types of systems. So currently, if we were to put water in or antifreeze, the valve is in line with the flow. So any water we pump in is going to go in and into the water heater, same with the antifreeze. So what we need to do is bypass it. So we're going to turn the valve in the opposite direction. So now the valve is in line with the bypass. So when we put the antifreeze through the system, the antifreeze will run through and it'll hit the bypass. It can't get past it, so the antifreeze won't go into the hot water heater. It'll flow up the bypass line, and then it will feed the system without going into the hot water heater. So now that we've bypassed the hot water heater, we need to find our water pump, and that is where we're actually going to suck the antifreeze through. So again, many different floor plans and models. It's sometimes difficult to locate the pump. You know what? An easy thing to do is simply turn the pump on and actually listen for it to try and locate it. So in this particular case, the water pump is located to the left of the bed. It's a carpeted step area, and so it is quite camouflaged and was a little bit tricky to find. So what we need to do is we need to disconnect the pump from the suction sides. If we look very carefully at the pump, and you're not going to be able to see it because of the angle here, but there is an arrow on the pump showing the direction of the water flow. And so the direction is actually going this way, which means we'll actually disconnect this side of the pump. Now this is a flow jet pump. It does have a quick release, and so I'm going to take the little blue clip and I'm going to release it, and then I'm going to push and disconnect the line from the tank, pushing in, and then I'm going to close the quick release, and then we're going to put the other end into our jug of antifreeze. Now there's not a whole lot of room in here, so I do have to be a little careful because it does look like the line is kinking a little bit just because of the lack of space. So I need to make sure when I turn it on, it is actually going to suck from the jug. Now that we have our antifreeze jug hooked up to the water pump, we're going to run absolutely everything. So I'm going to turn the pump on, and starting here, I'm going to run the cold in the kitchen until I see the antifreeze running clearly through, and I'm going to let it run for a second. Nice and pink. I'm going to do the same with the hot sides. I'm going to run that till it's running through nice and pink. Okay, we're doing the same in the bathroom, hot and cold. There's the hot sides. Okay, now it's finally coming through nice and pink, and that's just because of the distance. The bathroom is in the very back, the pump is in the very front. And we're going to run the cold side until it's coming through. Okay, it is very important that you do the toilet. A lot of people forget to do the toilet, and you can end up with some very serious problems. So we want to hold the flush on the toilet until we can see the pink antifreeze flushing through. This is another area that some people miss. We want to make sure that we actually not only run the taps in the bathroom tub, but we also run antifreeze through the shower head itself. So here we have our outside shower, and again, very important, we don't want to miss anything. So anywhere where there's any plumbing at all, we want to make sure we've got antifreeze running through it. So we're still hooked up to the antifreeze jug, and we're just going to turn it on, and we're going to run it till it's running through. So that is on the hot sides, running through nice and pink. And then I'm going to close that up, and then I'm going to run it on the cold sides. And again, just let it run for a second till it's coming through nice and pink. And then I can shut it off. And that's all done. We've done putting the antifreeze through the plumbing system from the water pump, and you're going to use anywhere from 1.5 gallons to 2.5 gallons of antifreeze to winterize your unit complete. A little bit of antifreeze did go down the traps, but I just like to be sure, so probably put about a cupful down each of the P traps. So I do this in, again, the kitchen, the bathroom, the tub, just to make sure that it's all through the entire system and we haven't missed any little spot that potentially could freeze. Once you're done winterizing your system, you want to make sure that you do wipe all of the antifreeze out of the sinks and out of the tub and things like that. You want to keep it nice and clean, and it can stain a little bit. Sometimes that is unpreventable because you'll clean it up and, you know, just the shifting or moving of the faucet, you might get a drop or two come out. But you want to do everything you can to make sure it's as clean as possible when you're finished. What we want to do here is just put everything back the way it was before we started. So we're going to disconnect our clear hose line, and we're going to hook the RV plumbing line back up to the system. Also, just once you're done too, just mop up any little droplets of water that may have fallen on the floor as you were disconnecting the lines. Make sure everything's dry. You want to have it all nice and dry for winter storage. So on the city water hookup on the outside, that's one of the last places that we need to make sure we have antifreeze. And there's a little mesh screen on there to prevent dirt and debris from getting in there. So we need to remove that. So we're just gonna pop that out. And so that's what we've got. We've got our little rubber washer with our screen. Now inside of here is a check valve. Now you need to make sure you've got your water pump in the off position, because if you push in on this check valve when it's pressurized, you're gonna get a squirt of antifreeze coming back at you. So I'm just gonna take my pinky finger and I'm gonna push in on the check valve until I get a little bit of antifreeze. Whoa. Even with the pump off, it still came out with some good pressure. So, and just pushing it in. As you can see, we got antifreeze that came out of that line. If you neglect the city water, if you don't do the city water, you can end up with problems in the springtime. So that is one area you definitely don't want to forget. So once we've done that, we can put everything back in place and we're all done. Well, thank you very much, guys. That is how you winterize your RV. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact our service department.